The comic book industry needs to choose between Twitter clout or sales. Are they more interested in getting likes and retweets or people actually buying their product? Which one? You can't have both. Well, you can have both, I guess. If they actually made good product, they'd probably get a lot better interactions on social media as well. But they're a lot more concerned with the outrage mob. It's a tale of two comic book industries. Manga sales and comic book crowdfunding numbers are at an all-time high. Yet the comic book direct market tells a markedly different story. Well, one of those sides is giving customers what they want, and the other side is telling them to go fuck themselves. Like, you're gonna take what we give you, and you're gonna like it. Not ending up all that well for him. The pandemic has hastened the demise of the American comic book shop. The big two, Marvel and DC, are scrambling to find alternative distribution after Diamond left publishers, retailers, and fans high and dry with an unexpected shutdown. Yeah, I'm sure the three people still reading Marvel and DC were sorely disappointed. In current year -1, DC gutted editorial via several rounds of layoffs. Most of them were deserved, and unceremoniously canceled many series. Most of them were deserved, if not all of them. With the impending merger of Warner Media and Discovery, it's very likely even more layoffs will hit the aging comic book publisher. Things are so bad at DC that there are rumors of a third party coming in to take over comic book production, while Warner retains the movie and TV rights. Or they're just going to license them out. So, imagine this take. Twatter is not the real world. Funny enough, Twatter is the world to some of these lunatics. Like, you know the people, man. Like, oh yeah, look, check out what this person tweeted an hour ago. And you go and you're scrolling for like 15 minutes to get to it. So the North American comic book industry is at a crossroads, and it needs to decide between chasing sales or chasing the approval of an increasingly anti-capitalist Twatter. And excessively racist, too. And if you ask comic book Twatter how the comic book industry is, they'll likely say it's all fine here despite mountains of evidence to the contrary. Now, comic book Twatter is mostly made up of comic book freelancers, journalists, and alleged fans or hangers-on of said pros and journalists. Yeah, it's all so when you see them talking smack, it's basically a job application. You know, some offer daily or hourly hot takes on comics. Oh, by the minute, man. And what the industry should be in their eyes. But the truth is, you'll probably find very few average consumers on Twatter. According to industry superstar Mark Millar, the vast majority of the comic book buying audience isn't on Twatter. Oh, yeah. Here's an amazing stat I heard yesterday. Only 10% of comic buyers have a Twatter account, and only half of those accounts are actually active. Thus, 95% of the comic book audience is not on Twatter, which must be mind-blowing for the company marketing departments. Yeah, because they've been focusing exclusively on Twatter, to the detriment of the vast majority of the rest of their audience. So I wish there was a way we could get the rest of these statistics, because a lot of the rest of it is, of the 5% on Twatter, how many of them support this woke garbage? It's probably just 5% of that 5%. So also factor in the average person follows so many people, comic promos are easy to miss, and you quickly realize Twitter is just a fun way to meet and chat with people who share our various passions as opposed to a genuine marketing tool. For certain groups of people, yes. But for others, if we just try to have fun chats, we get suspended. So we have our fun chats off platform. Now, Millar, who is one of the most successful comic book creators in the modern industry, received pushback from a comic book journalist. Chris Arant of Newsrama thought Millar's claim was weird and asked where he got it from. Millar replied it was from someone from marketing at one of the big two. Well, given how successful Mark Millar is and how much of a failure his detractors are, I think I'll know who I'll believe. For several years now, the comic book industry has seemingly been chasing Twitter clout and using Twitter popularity and trending political talking points as a roadmap for new projects going forward. Whatever puts them out of business sooner, I mean, I don't really care. Right now, they're competition. I'm making my own. We don't need them. They can go bankrupt tomorrow, and it would just benefit us, really. And it hasn't been working out very well for them. Twatter is notoriously popular among journalists, and it would seem that a feedback loop has been created where journalists, pros who are vocal Twatter users, and the accounts that support them have created a system where they dictate the content comic publishers are producing. And again, the direct market content is flatlining in sales. People still want comics, they just don't want your comics. Yes. As seen with crowdfunding in manga, yes. But it doesn't take a mathematician to look at the sales of manga and the massive uptick in crowdfunding to see that consumers are going elsewhere for comics. So Pimp Master Broda put this out. My Barnes & Noble reduced the American graphic novel section to one panel and a few tables. Manga and anime merch now take up about 15% of the store. Hope the Western comic industry gets it together or they're going to get wombo comboed into a van down by the river. I don't even care anymore. Fuck them. Even if they did get us together, I still wouldn't go back. It's too late. I've moved on. Once you hit the apathy stage, it's over. See, this is actually why I'm actually glad that that people are mad that Blade Devil's late in a way, because at least it means they still care. Once they stop caring and they're just like, yeah, I just want a refund, I don't care anymore. That's when I start getting a bit depressed. It's like, damn it, that's someone who I probably lost for good right there. Like, that hurts. But if they're still mad, that means they still care. That means it can still be fixed. But once the apathy kicks in, there's nothing you can do anymore. Nothing. As I sure as hell know from personal experience, I have zero interest in ever going back to any of the IPs I've left behind. I don't care if they get right back on track. I've moved on. I'm watching, reading, playing other things. And manga accounted for all of the top 20 adult graphic novel sales in April and May, and you know June's going to be the same of current year. Recent comics crowdfunding campaigns have netted hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions in the case of Boom Studios' Berserker and Todd McFarlane's Spawn Kickstarter campaigns. To be fair, though, Todd McFarlane's campaign was more for the toy and the comic was an add-on, but still, Todd McFarlane knows what he's doing. So this success comes despite attempts by Twatter and the media that spends entirely too much time on Twatter trying to shame Boom Studios out of using Kickstarter to crowdfund Berserker, with the argument being that publishers shouldn't use crowdfunding because it was only for small press creators who didn't have any other options. The same tactic was used against Archie Comics in current year -6, but they caved to the Twatter outrage mob. Boom wisely ignored comic book Twatter and went on to sell over 600,000 copies of Berserker. Ignore Twatter, and this is what you can get. So journalists are slowly coming around to accept Kickstarter as a viable sales channel for comics, but they're widely ignoring Indiegogo, likely due to political bias. Indiegogo has seen an uptick in conservative comics crowdfunders due to a situation. Basically, Kickstarter having a political commissar and banning people they don't agree with. And since this is Neon from Clownfish that wrote this, they also have a lot of stories from the beginning of webcomics and crowdfunding, because they were making webcomics back when webcomics were still relatively new, and the legacy industry looked down their noses at them. It's like, oh, webcomics are amateur hour. It's like, oh, isn't it cute? Look at all these little amateurs pretending like they're professional, just like us real comic book creators. And then webcomics started crushing their real comics. So what happened? They tried to muscle into Webtoon. And they're doing the same thing with crowdfunding. The same people who looked down their noses at crowdfunding, like, oh, that's just e-begging. Look at those losers. They don't work for a real company like us. Now all these self-proclaimed pros are, by their own definition, e-begging on Kickstarter. Are comics publishers starting to learn that Twatter and journalists aren't often concerned about their bottom lines? Yeah, what a concept. Now, there are rumblings that the comics publishers are starting to wise up and are actively trying to ferret out creators and journalists who are, in fact, anti-consumer. Yeah, too bad they waited this long. If they did this like 5 years ago, their industry could have been recovering right now. But as it is, they chased everyone away. No one's going to come back anymore. Now, the manga audience wants nothing to do with them. They already have manga, which is way better. Their old comic book fans are gone. Like they're not going to come back after the level of mistreatment they got. They've probably joined the manga audience at this point. Or they're buying European comics. So this is, of course, pure scuttlebutt. But looking at some anecdotal evidence, it may be that comic publishers are trying to once again focus on publishing marketable comics and are leaving Twatter and the Yurno opinions in the dust. But it's being reported that DC Comics is no longer sending review copies to some outlets, and press credentials are also being investigated. So this is from Bitch Johnston. Bleeding Cool naturally doesn't get review copies of DC Comics titles. They're like $5 nowadays. You should be able to get them yourself. I mean, the ad revenue should cover that, right? It's a tax write-off. Yeah, but I understand that some smaller sites or channels, not all, are saying they've been dropped from access this week. Is that you? Oh, it's going to be great when the Access media dies. Because they're not honest. If they get special treatment from the corpos, they make sure to never offend the corpos or they risk losing the special treatment. Yeah, that's why I don't have sponsors. I had at one point on rare occasions, but if it happens, I'll let you know. If I'm shilling a video game, for example, it's because I legitimately play it and like it. In fact, I try to avoid talking about a lot of games because some NPC idiots may start attacking the developers of those games just because people they don't like enjoy the game. And I don't want to put the developers in those positions. But otherwise, if I shill for a game, it's because I personally like it. That's all there is to it. There's no conflicting loyalty. I don't, it's not like some companies that they take money from customers, but they get more money from investors. So they suck the investors' dick and tell the customers to fuck off. Like, I'm going out of my way to avoid that. I actually had people offering. Like once Blade Devil was looking to be as successful as it is, I had like 2 people message me like, oh, hey, would you be interested in bringing investors on? No, I wouldn't. Because I'd rather only have the customers to be loyal to. Because once investors get involved, if they throw more money in than the customers currently are, they're in charge. They get to call the shots. I'd rather make sure that the only people that decide what continues getting made are the customers. Whatever the case may be, it seems the comic book industry will need to start ignoring Twitter and some media outlets if they want to survive. I think they're already resigned to dying. I think some other YouTubers have already pointed out that they're pretty much they're milking paychecks. Like if you look at Fabio Hulk, for example, it's pretty obvious that they don't care anymore. They know that the company is circling the drain and everyone working there is just milking however as many paychecks as they can until it all comes crashing down. They don't care. They're not invested in the company's future. They don't care about how the next people to take over these IPs are gonna be able to go from there, because this is the end. They know it's the end. They don't care. Like, oh, well, what's this storyline going to do? Like, how is the next creative team going to go? Where are they going to go from here? How are they going to? No one cares. There's not going to be a next team. It's done. It's over. Like with X-Men in particular, like, man, where do they go after this whole Krakoa thing? Where are they going to take it from there? What's the next creative team going to do? How are they going to write the X-Men stories going forward? They won't. This is it. This is the end. None of these people care about the future because they know there is no future for them. Yeah, if in the off chance they don't collapse in the next year or two, they will just reboot it. That's right. It's not your customer base. It never was. Yep, in reference to Twatter. Manga and crowdfunding are eating your lunch comics. Either you fix the problem or you starve. Your choice. The customers are there. You just need to choose them over Twatter clout. Well, it's too late now. The only way you could convince me to go back to the legacy comic industry is if it was completely purged of every one of these bad actors. Like every single comic pro that was popping off on fans on Twitter, every single executive that was pushing for this activist shit, every last one of them needs to be purged from the industry. If even one of them is left, I can't trust them. I'll just be waiting for the bait and switch. That's the only possible chance they have at recovery. So, goodbye. Oh man, I am so excited to tell you guys right now that finally, after about a year of build-up and shilling, we have launched Blade Devil on Indiegogo, and so far it is doing so well thanks to awesome people like you. If you haven't backed it yet, then please check the links in the description and check out Blade Devil on Indiegogo. You will not be disappointed. Looking forward to seeing you there.